The winter of 2018 was brutal, followed by a cold, wet spring. I had very low expectations for 2019. I started with attempts to hunt eastern grouse. A trip to Butler County proved useless as I saw no birds at all. Coupled with an aging body and warm temperatures, I kept my hunts relatively short and usually quit by 10 in the morning. Another attempt in Johnson County was no better as again I was skunked. This is the first year I saw no grouse. Their habitat has been terribly depleted in the last 2 decades. Pheasant hunting began with the youth season, which occurred the third week of October. I drove to Tecumseh and queried a game warden as to if any hunters were without a dog. He pointed out a group of 4 whom I approached. They hadn't had any luck, and I asked them if they'd like to hunt with a dog. They were happy to accommodate. In the next hour and a half, they had 6 roosters. Carrying a video camera, I got several action shots. Since a good number of birds are released during the youth season, the release locations are a great place to run your dog during the week. I hit 2 oaks and Hickory Ridge, and T-Bone chased up around 20 birds. No hens, so they were all released ones. Hunting pressure is extremely high at these 2 WMAs opening weekends, so I stay clear. I decided to hunt Iowa this year. Last year a guy tipped me off to a good area in Iowa that is close and has lots of opportunities. Opening day I flushed about 5 birds. Only one was a rooster, and I did not shoot since it was flushed into the early morning sun and was hard to identify. Pressure was pretty high in the area, but there were plenty of areas to hunt. The first week I headed to South Dakota, hunting Judd Houston's ranch. Has always been very successful. The first day up there I hunted a public area for a little over an hour, and T-Bone flushed a rooster, which flew so low I couldn't get a shot at it for fear of hitting the dog. Another bird flushed seconds later and I dropped him. My back was bothering me. The next day at Houston's I walked a fence line adjacent to a large milo field. Several roosters flushed deep into the milo, and I passed up the shot since it wasn't Houston's field. Hunting my favorite spots left with several hen flushes and no roosters. Several snowstorms had hit the area in October, packing down the grass. It was my guess that the birds all moved to the large milo fields, which were adjacent to Houston's. My shoulders and back were bothering me a lot, and it limited how long I could hunt. Houston had food strips for their birds, but no large fields that were unpicked. I hunted 2 days and shot one rooster, which was pretty far out. It was a matter of poor timing. If I would have waited 2 weeks, I'm sure I would have had more success. The cost of hunting is getting pretty high when hunting South Dakota, when you factor in motel, license fee, gas, and trespass fees. Since I had an Iowa license, I decided to hunt there since the one-way trip never exceeded 70 miles. The next Iowa hunt I did better and dropped a bird. It's the few times I kicked up multiple birds. 2 were roosters and several hens with them. I dropped one on the gravel road. I seldom shoot at multiple roosters. It's too easy to lose the first bird drop. Most of the Iowa hunts only produced a handful of flushes on each hunt, but fortunately roosters were in the majority. I tried hunting Nebraska about mid-November and hit a few fields by Ceresco. I entered one field with a food strip and T-Bone was on an immediate scent. Shortly after, a pheasant flushed right over me, flying towards dense cattails, and I rushed the shot, leaving me 0 for 1. Moving on to the next field, T-Bone flushed another rooster, an easy shot which I missed. Went 0 for 2 that day and was very disgusted with my shooting. The next hunt was an Iowa one. I hunted most of the morning with little luck. Trying one last field, I hit a small 15-acre patch. I wasn't expecting much and put 2 shells in my pump. I hardly hit the field and T-bone was on a hot scent. 2 roosters got up and I shot at the first one, missing. Moved on to the second. I fired, missed, and put a decent lead on the bird, firing again, and click. It was very unusual for me to put only 2 shells in my gun. T-bone wasn't done yet. I quickly reloaded. He kicks up another pheasant. I shoot and miss and try a second shot. My gun jammed. I couldn't believe my luck. That's 5 misses on easy shots in 2 outings. The next hunt was better, but bad luck followed me. I entered a massive field. 75 yards into it, a pheasant flushed in front of me and I missed. I saw where he landed, but it was a large field, so I didn't know if I could find it. We worked our way another 100 yards or so. It flushed and I dropped it in heavy cover. T-bone quickly found it and I put it in my vest, so I thought. As I continued walking 35 yards or so, I felt my pouch, and it was empty. The bird never was in the pouch. It dropped to the ground between my vest and coat. I walked back and tried to find it, to no avail. I hit one more field that morning and T-bone flushed a bird. I dropped it and went over to pick it up. I was quite near the dead one and another bird flushed. I shot and turned back to get my first bird. T-bone was on the second one right away, but I noticed he was having trouble finding it. We spent a number of minutes searching, but no luck. 3 birds in one day and only one to take home. Wednesday, the week before Thanksgiving, I went to Tecumseh because Game and Parks was releasing birds at several WMAs. I figured by 11 o'clock they would have them released and I'd have an early shot at them. Well, it wasn't so. Hit a spot and no birds, so I headed on to the other WMA. I walked one small area and nothing. A group of 7 hunters pulled up in several vehicles and got out to hunt the field I just walked. I told them not to waste their time. I left to go back to the first WMA. As I turned off the highway to return to the first spot, I noticed the Game and Parks vehicle with an empty trailer parking just off the highway. I asked him if he released any birds yet, and he said the truck was coming to deliver them. I went on to hunt a spot that I knew had quail. Within 10 minutes, T-bone had a scent, and up went a rooster. I dropped it and continued along the creek. Suddenly, a small covey of quail jumped up in front of me. I zeroed in on one and dropped it. Meanwhile, the birds were being released. I went to the far southeast end of the WMA since they've been releasing birds in that area during the youth hunt. No dice this time. No birds flushed, so I moved to a different area. Hunters were beginning to show up, and several pickups were in the parking lot. Birds had been released in this area, and a few were being flushed by other hunters. I stepped into the field, and T-bone was immediately on a scent. A rooster flushed, and bang, he was down. Soon another rooster flushed, flying in front of the parked pickup, so I held off on a shot. I hunted another half hour, and T-bone got birdie again. A rooster flushed within 10 yards, and he was history. I'd limited out for the first and only time of the year. I hunted Iowa several more times and picked up a few more birds. Last year I had seen birds around Schuyler, so I thought I'd try there. After an hour drive, I began walking a lowland CRP area. It was quite thick, and I knew I'd wear myself out if I walked in the thickest part. I headed to the north edge, which is closer to an unpicked field, figuring birds would frequent that part. I was right, and T-Bone flushed a bird about 30 yards out. I dropped it. This was the first wild bird of the season taken in Nebraska. Weather was good all of December with little wind on most days. I hunted a number of times in Iowa, picking up a bird here and there. The last bird taken was in a 15-acre plot, the same one in which I missed 3 roosters in a row. This time I entered the field, which had tall standing grass. After a minute of stomping around, a rooster flushed, and I brought it down. It was an older bird from last year. Almost all the roosters I took so far were young and had short tail feathers. I tried Schuyler again in late December and flushed 4 roosters, but didn't get any. I missed one really easy shot. Most of the season I had problems with close flushes. Sad to say, shooting at 4 roosters is the most shooting I had in one day all year. Jay had called me earlier about setting up a hunt at Erickson's in Tacoma for the 30th, which I set up. Later he called to add the 28th, which worked out. We had 4 hunters until noon. I harvested 1 bird the first field we entered in less than 5 minutes. That was the only shot of the day. 1 other bird was dropped and lost by one of the other hunters and later retrieved by Erickson's black lab. Jay and 1 other hunter left at noon. 2 of us hunted the afternoon and we got 2 more birds, and a 3rd bird flushed into a power line and broke its neck. Roughly 20 birds were flushed and we got the roosters. It was a poor hunt for the area. Frankly, the weather was too good and the birds weren't using CRP for cover. My last Nebraska hunt of the year was January 3rd in Schuyler. I flushed 5 birds and only 1 was a rooster, which was out of range. The season ended with a short hunt in Iowa. It had rained and froze up. It was very noisy walking in the CRP, and I only flushed 1 hen, which T-Bone did a good job in pointing. All in all, the season was disappointing on 3 fronts. I missed about 7 really easy shots, and the number of birds flushed per outing were very low. To top that off, my back bothered me during most of the season. The upside was that I did get a number of close flushes. My total for the year, 16 roosters and 1 quail. 2 years earlier, I had taken 30 pheasants and 15 quail. It's sad to see the end of the 2019 season. There may not be another season for me. I'm hoping I'll be able to hunt another year or two, but the back is getting bad and it's not getting any better. In any respect, I can't complain a lot. I've had some very good hunting in the state of Nebraska, in the Midwest, South Dakota, even in Iowa. So I'm looking sadly into the future, hoping that at least there's another year or so in my hunting